You are listening to the Hire Fast podcast. On today's episode, I will be joined by Corey Masson, who will help me unpack and align 3 powerful stories to show you how when your team takes responsibility and owns something, they care more. What is the culture of care? What are we after with a culture of care? Why does care matter? Today we discuss the 3rd cornerstone of care, the letter R, and what it stands for. All right, let's rock and roll.
The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Hire Fast podcast, a podcast aimed at educating you on hiring the right person for the right job and keeping them. Are you sick of spending precious time and energy hiring and training people just to have them turn around and quit? Then join Alan and his guests on Hire Fast as they teach you how to skillfully motivate and attract rock star talent. Now here is your host, Alan Daviduk.
Hello, I want to thank you for listening to the Hire Fast podcast. I'm Alan Daviduk. This podcast is your source for all things attracting, hiring, recruiting, staffing, employee engagement, developing, retaining, and creating what we call rock stars. So I'm here today with Corey Masson from the Smart System. Hey, Corey, how you doing?
Pretty awesome, Alan. I was out suntanning yesterday. It was sunny, but unfortunately, I guess it was like a balmy 21 with the wind chill factor.
You know, I wish the people at home could see our producer, Chrissy. She's literally sitting here with a winter coat, scarf, ear muffs, the whole thing.
Absolutely. I have a leopard print blanket underneath the table, too.
And it's cold outside today, guys. We had this one nice week of nice weather, and we got spoiled. So I just want to recap real quick what we did last week. So we are continuing to talk about the SMART system, skillfully motivate, attract rockstar talent, right? Which was the steps I used to achieve the 2 most important things to turn the restaurants around, was employee engagement and employee retention. And you know, what is CARE, right? It's the secret sauce, I think is what we call it. It's a framework that stands for connection, affirmation, responsibility, and environment. And it's the foundation for employee engagement, which is one of the biggest things that we're after. And it magnifies employee retention.
Right.
So why does CARE matter? You know, employee engagement is suffering. Like, many people are disengaged. 60% of employees out there are disengaged, and over 50% of them are looking for a job while they're working.
This
right?
is true.
This is a problem. And, you know, I had someone ask me the other day, what is engagement? Like, what does it even mean? Mm-hmm. Right? So I kind of thought about that. How could I say it so simply? And it's really this simple, right? If someone cares, they're engaged. If they don't care, they're disengaged. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely.
And why should leaders care, right? Leaders, you know, if you don't have the engagement from the employees, you can't increase productivity, you can't increase profitability, right? So as a leader in a business, a restaurant, any type of operation, you know, without that engagement, you can't run the ship. You can't go forward. So who does CARE impact, right? If we have a disengaged team, I think it impacts everybody, right? It impacts the customer, it impacts the team, it impacts us, right? We're unhealthy, right? Because now we're frustrated and stressed all the time, so it affects us in our body. You know, it affects us, what I like to call being, where, you know, spirituality and God, we start blaming everybody for everything. And, you know, when we don't have the right people helping us steering the ship, and balance. This affected me for a long time, where I wasn't able to do things with my wife, and I wasn't able to get home and do things with my kids. And I've got 7 kids at home, and it really quickly, you saw it happening right in front of you, unfolding. You get home and you'd be exhausted. So, and what's interesting, as leaders, we think, right, it's an employee problem. And it's not. It's a leadership problem. It's an us problem, right? And it's our responsibility. And I think a lot of leaders don't see that. They want to push the blame somewhere else. So I have a mentor. His name is Mark Miller, and he's taught me a lot of stuff that kind of helped me when I was putting together the SMART system. And he says that engagement unleashes untapped potential buried deep within our hearts of our people. An engaged workforce is more creative, driven, and enthusiastic with helping us reach our goals. I think that like sums it up, doesn't it?
It does. Engagement is obviously, like you said, the secret sauce. It's the lifeline of an organization. If the ship has a bunch of people on it, who's manning it is obviously one question, but a ship can't sail by itself. Wind obviously has to come in. If you've got a sailboat, the wind has to engage with the sails, but someone has to right the ship to actually take advantage of that wind that's coming in. So how about a whole team coming together to actually move the ship forward, move the organization forward? Anyways, if you have a disengaged team, there's a lack of vision. Keep going.
So what we're giving the people listening to this podcast is the actual framework and, you know, the secret to increasing engagement in your operation. And so far, up to now, we've talked about two pieces of the puzzle. We've talked about connection and affirmation. Connection being my definition, the level of affinity that's held by a person. It's really how we connect with our customers and we connect with each other in the restaurant. And we talked about affirmation, which is expressions of support and value, encouragement. You know, it's the way we talk to each other.
Right.
So that's where we're at. Today, we're talking about responsibility. And Corey and I have slightly different definitions, so we want to give them both to you. So my definition of responsibility is personal ownership and accountability for a task, project, or outcome.
Well, you know, ultimately, the SMART definition, the way we look at it, is responsibility is the talent's ability to perform their duties to assist themselves and their team members in adhering to compensation plans, the company policies, and values, the reason why they exist.
So that's interesting. So the way that I looked at responsibility is, you know, it's the person, right, and them taking ownership of something. And your spin on responsibility goes much farther and deeper, the SMART definition, right?
Right. Well, it's strictly because, you know, if you think of what C.A.R.E has been so far, why do we exist? For connection. How do we build upon that connection? We have an affirmation. But now we have all responsibility in seeing that through. So each one's a cornerstone and building block for each other. And if I'm not responsible to perform the duties and adhering to these things that are relative to the business and why we exist, you know, again, what's the policies, what's the values, vision, mission, and then ultimately I want to be compensated. You know, I'm going to say I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Then I really
say you're going to do. Yeah.
Exactly, right? You know, like pay to perform, pay to play, as we always talk about. And, you know, if I don't adhere to my compensation plan and or why the organization exists, I'm not understanding the responsibility and my role in doing so. Do you have a story or something that you might want to share with me, like how this takes action by chance?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to tell you a story about Danielle. So Danielle worked for me in the Dunkin' Donut world, and we had some corporate inspections that were coming up. And I was just so busy. I had so many things going on at the time, and it was like, oh, now I got to deal with corporate when they walk in.
Do they use pink ink by chance? Because, you know, like an inspection is usually red ink.
Yeah, I don't even remember, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But I just know he showed up with a clipboard, right?
Okay.
It was always somebody, you know, that used to be the thing in the Dunkin' Donut world, right? Hey, we need some help, and they'd show up with a clipboard, and they'd do an inspection.
Okay.
So,
have a donut and coffee with that.
So Danielle, so I pulled her in the office, right? And Danielle was a great girl, and you know she anytime you gave her something to do, she like put a cape on, like she went to the next level, right? So I brought her in. I said, Danielle, I really need some help. We're having these inspections. It's very important that the managers that are in the stores see what they don't see. And I actually said this to her. I said, and I'm not calling anybody a pig, but I said the pig lives in the mud pile sometimes and lives there so it doesn't know it's dirty, right? Because it sees, when you walk by the same thing 12 times because it's just part of your routine, you learn to look past it. I said, what I need is fresh eyes. I need someone that goes in and sees what they don't see to help them, right? To be ready. If we self-assess ourselves really vigorously, man, who cares about corporate? They walk in, walk out, it doesn't matter, right? Because we're doing it for ourselves, right? We want to run a great operation. So I not only did I send Danielle out with this mission, right, and told her exactly what to do, then I aligned with each manager, and because the minute I told them this was happening, boom, wall came up, right? They were like, no, I don't want her in here. I know what to do, da-da-da-da-da. I said, well, we're trying to better ourselves, right? We need someone with a different set of eyes to look at it, right? Look at it through a different lens.
Right.
Maybe look at it this way. You're looking at it this way, So, so Danielle went to work, and I don't think I was 100% prepared for what happened. So, the emails and the photos started coming in with all the commentary. And I'm not talking like, she went and she showed up at the restaurant. Now, I paid her whatever it was, right? But I think she did a lot on her own. Like, there's no way that she gave me everything, because she just owned this. And she went into the restaurants in the morning and at night and, on her day off and all these different things. And when I say pictures, I'm talking like 300-400 pictures for each location. It was overwhelming, right? But I said to the managers, just digest it, right? She's showing you what you don't see. This is super powerful, right? So needless to say, Danielle did her mission. There was a lot of, bruised feelings along the way because people took it personally, right? But, that wasn't the intent. And I reiterated it over and over again. That's not the intent. So corporate comes in. Now, this was the funny thing about the preparation, the level of preparation, right?
Okay.
We get to store one. He opens a couple fridges, starts talking to me about a bunch of things. He goes, all right, let's go to the next store. We get to now Danielle's hiding, like in the bushes, like with binoculars, wants to see what's going on, right? So we get to the next store. He looks at a few things. He hands the clipboard to the manager and tells the manager to finish the inspection, because everything he saw was so on point. So look at what Danielle did.
Well, I want to go back here. You actually had trust in an employee, Danielle.
Yes.
And you said, hey, I'm going to put you to task on something that is currently not within her job function, correct?
Correct.
And you're giving the rest of the team a gift, technically speaking, by having someone who's inside, who understands the core operations already, who's going to do a self-evaluation. And it's interesting that the team member for whom did this had an absorbent amount of trust in you, and you trusted her, and then ultimately the managers were fearing that trust level.
Right. That's true.
That's an interesting conversation that we haven't unpacked in what that really means. And I heard, this reigns true to the principles of self-guidance and to self-motivation, to self-assessing progress. Now, Danielle might have gone overkill and might have what I have, an analysis paralysis capability, but that's only because I want to ensure I do the right research and ensure that the corporate inspection, or she did, especially I would too, that's going to go through without a glitch. The challenge I have in question moving forward is, did the team value what she did, number one? Number two is, did this opportunity to do these inspections and actually do a self-reflection internally prove out that we can do this always as we go down the road?
Well, to answer the first question, I think they didn't until they got the result.
Exactly.
Right. The second thing was, now we had a benchmark that we could always go up against. Right. We want to do exactly what we did there, or 85% of what we did there. Right. And I actually became a model, became a standard. Right, of how we go into that process.
Again, it comes back to that word trust, right? You cared enough and understood enough to look ahead and hey, let's point inward before pointing outward to get us evaluation. Let's be our own evaluation system. And that's obviously what the system of C.A.R.E is. It's a continuous improvement framework that says, hey, are we connecting? Are we affirming each other? Are we taking responsibility for the job that we're doing so our environment stands to the test of time of customer service, talent satisfaction?
Yeah.
So that's a great story, and I'm hoping that Danielle realizes that years later she's being affirmed for her role and responsibility in seeing this through.
I'm definitely sending her this podcast link.
Sounds like a good idea. How about a time when your team members possibly were more on task? Do you have another opportunity to share with us, or again took self-guidance to the next level because they drank the juice?
So
not the coffee, but the juice.
The juice.
Yeah.
So I have a girl named Alexis, and Alexis is very quiet. And we had an event that was coming up on Thanksgiving. there's a club in town that does a running club.
Okay.
And we have this big, gigantic coffee cup. It's like 12 feet long, 12 feet tall. And I said to Alexis, I said, listen, I got to do stuff at home. I'm going to be trying to make sure that the restaurant, because we're open on Thanksgiving, but then we got this big event that's happening. I need you to take it over. Mm-hmm. Here's the person. I'll make the connection. Whatever you need. Here's all the stuff, the tables and the tablecloths, right? Everything. It's all here in a box. I just need you to make it the best event ever. So one of the agreements that we had was this big giant coffee cup was going to go at the finish line of this race.
Right.
Right. And every runner, as they came across the finish line, would be, they take a picture with the time, and the cup is sitting there. Right. So it was beautiful marketing. Right. And I was actually on a walk. I walked down my street. My street's about a mile long, and one of the news weather people lives on my street for WMUR, the local radio TV station.
Okay.
And I told him about the event, and he says, okay, I'll tell the right people to get there. So the TV was going to be there. So we were going to be on TV. I was like, Alexis, this is big.
Fun.
Right? So I'll tell you, she owned this thing. Mm-hmm. She made sure the pastries were the table was set up, like everything was in place. The guys were there early with the cords to set up, like all of the, it's like planning a wedding. Right, when you're doing this stuff, right? There's so many little intricate details that you miss, and you have to make adjustments, like, on the fly, like on demand, right?
Yeah.
And I don't even know, I couldn't even list them all out, all right, because Alexis did it. And then after the event, she was invisible, and then as the event closed up, whoosh, like everything just disappeared. Like it was just such a beautiful process, and I didn't have to worry about a thing. Mm-hmm. And we were on TV, and the runners loved it. They had, in every photo that's going to sit on their fridge or on their shelf forever has the big coffee cup in the background. It was beautiful, right? You couldn't ask for anything better. This is a 21-year-old young, quiet girl that just went ba-boom like a flower, just opened right up.
So just out of curiosity, again, this was a running event for what cause?
It was a running club.
Okay.
It's called the Greater Dairy Trek Club.
Okay. And I think this event also donates money and other things to the community, right?
Yes.
Okay. Being Turkey Day, ultimately everyone's tired from the night before. That's one of the biggest party nights. So
2,000 people showed up for the race.
2,000 people, 21-year-old showing up the next day for an event. So she took responsibility to the next level by showing up on time and ensuring that everyone was taken care of with the coffee. I've run many of those events, and the first thing I want ultimately when I'm done is something to sugar high, continue the euphoria. But Alexis ultimately is seeking praise today for her on-task efforts, but more importantly that she stayed focused. She made exceptional just-in-time decision-making, when to show up, when not to show up, which is a hard thing to do because ultimately, as team members who are seeking validation, they always want to be in the limelight, in the front. And you told me how she was in the background. She did her job, accepted her position in the job, and let others do their job. And that's really a compliment to the culture that you're building with the ultimately with the SMART system being employed. Another thing that I'm intrigued by is that she was observant. Again, an organization that goes through and the SMART system becomes observant and continues to be initiative driven. Like, okay, what's next? How do I get to the next level here? How do I complement not just me, but the team member, because we all exist to right the ship in our focus and the mission. So I really think that's a wonderful story, but more importantly, yes, it's a great marketing play, but at the end of the day, if she didn't do her job, and her job was to stay on task, be self-guided, assess the progress of what she's doing. Again, all things that are part of the responsibility tenets or values, as we call them. She would not have actually succeeded.
It was a beautiful thing to see, and the observant piece was you're absolutely right on. My wife actually questioned it when I told her what I was doing. She said, "Are you sure she's the right person?" I'm like, "Well, we're in it now, so." But she just owned it, right? And when someone cares about what they're doing, when they own something, they care more.
Exactly. That's so true. Well, the other tenets of, again, responsibility, is like between compensation plans is company policies. And it's falling within the organization's policies and procedures. Now, ultimately, do you have anything that you might want to share with me where like a team members adhere to policies and procedures? These are not sexy things. Let's just call it out.
Yeah, that's true.
But they're the do's and the don'ts of the organization. And it's their responsibility to be adhering to the do's and the don'ts.
So I'd like to introduce you to Tiffany, right? Tiffany was a girl that worked for me back in the Dunkin' Donut world.
Okay.
And this was when I first implemented the SMART system, right? The compensation plan, the whole thing, right? I had conversations with all 55 employees, and I put it all out there, and we started executing it. And
Okay.
it benefited some, and it didn't benefit others. It actually exposed others, right? So that caused a little bit of friction. So I remember one day I'm out in the kitchen, I'm washing my hands, and there was a wall where the sink was, and there was this conversation happening around the corner on the other side of the wall. And it was Tiffany and another girl, and I cannot remember the other girl's name. But the other girl was frustrated. So I'm washing my hands, and I'm listening, and I didn't want to disturb anything. I didn't want anybody to know I was there. And I hear the girl say, "Oh, this program that Alan has, it's stupid. It's horrible." And Tiffany, just going about her business, says, "Why, you don't like it because it doesn't benefit you?" And then without a hitch, she said, "Well, I make $5 more an hour than you, and I'm sure that's why it upsets you, because you're not me. You don't do the things that I do. I've been getting up, opening this restaurant at 4 o'clock in the morning for 10 years.
Right.
You're not me. That's why you don't make the money.
Right.
So if you want what I want, you have to do what I do." And I was just like, oh, if that's not, I mean, that sells itself.
It does. Now, where it would be a true statement that the two of them had the same position.
Yeah, very similar.
Right.
They were pretty much even as far as what was happening in the front of the restaurant.
But so again, it's interesting you said like it benefits some and didn't benefit others. The reality is that's life. Like you gave them a gift, an opportunity to make more money, an opportunity to actually reap the benefit of a culture that's thriving, reap the benefit of ultimately how do we stay focused? How do we do more with less partners, team members? How do we do more with less frustration and headaches? You know, ultimately, in the end, and it's a behavioral discussion here, is that other team member that you don't remember, which is great, you don't remember her name, ultimately is a wallflower and like the chatter, like this won't work, this can't work. Well, the reality is it was working, and the reality is that person weeded herself out.
Agreed. Yep.
And, you know, it sounds as though Tiffany understood the policies and procedures, because those policies and procedures, the do's and the don'ts, the things that we're going to stand by each other and for each other to activate the vision and mission of the organization, it's important to ultimately, in the end, hey, I want to compensate you more because you're doing the things you say you're going to do, and more importantly, you do the things that we need you to do.
Well, you unpacked those deeper than even I thought, so that was great.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just face it, man. You have a team. You had a team with Duncan that became responsible. It didn't happen overnight. And Tiffany didn't change overnight. Alexis, your wife was concerned, but you saw something in her that she didn't see. It's because you had different levels of engagement. But the most important thing that you do is you trust someone. So
that is C.A.R.E in a nutshell. So now we got to talk about what do we do with this? An idea for action. So, you had an idea that we had talked about in the car on the way over here with the compensation plan.
Did I? Well, ultimately, the compensation plan is a game changer for everybody. And it's obviously it changed for Tiffany, right? Like, let's just go back to the prior story that we're all just heard is Tiffany is able to get paid more for the same duty opportunities that the other lady had.
Right.
And in the end, when we were sitting down with another organization yesterday, we were asking ultimately, well, how do you identify the right talent? And how do you go ahead and compensate that talent? Well, it's putting together a plan that says, hey, here's our ideal employee, our avatar as you use often. You know, here's where the lowest of low opportunity, but here's the highest of high, the floor, the ceiling. And though in the end, you know, an ideal action is to actually develop an opportunity, a compensation plan, say, I want to pay you more because in the end, you're going to cost me less. In the end, you're going to cost me less to train a new employee. You're going to cost me less frustration because the customers are not happy. And more importantly, you're keeping the other talent satisfied. So the compensation plan and this whole responsibility lens of R is about doing the things that, like, again, are we all on task together? Can we all adhere to the policies and procedures? Can we all be self-guided? And if so, then we're activating the compensation plan. It's identifying the value for each other and, more importantly, the value for customer success. And identifying the things that can separate each other is because I'm not a morning person. You are. I'm more of an evening person. You're not. But the reality is we're not open in the evening, so why should I get paid more when I'm not working the peak hours? So there's different ways to spin a compensation plan. It's pay to play and pay to perform.
It was a game changer for me. And the biggest thing for me was, and we've talked about it, this day zero, right? So we haven't even brought the person on board yet. But we have something to sell, right? Because we've got this great plan. It's what we offer, right? You want to work here, this is our offer, right? It's how we attract the better people. And we basically are setting the stage in advance before the person ever even walks in the door, right? And that's huge. That doesn't happen a lot. A lot of times we're pivoting, to what the person says. We go the other way with our compensation plan now. We say, nope, this is what we do. This is how we do it.
Right.
You're on board or aren't you? Right? And it's how we hold people accountable. So the people that are already working for you, they understand when the new person comes in that they're going to have to follow the rules, right? They're not going to be set to a different standard, right? And that's huge. And that's somewhere along the way that's gotten lost.
Right. Well, what's interesting is, all the talent today are, basically if you're the job seekers, which 51% of talent this year are going to be looking to get a job. So someone who is employed by organization X January 1st, 2022 is going to be employed by a different company January 1st, 2023. More than half the talent in America.
They're going to turn over.
So my point being here is they're sending out applications to, on average, of 17 people when they're actually looking for a job. All of them are paying the same. The question is, how do you incentivize a company, that talent seeker to come to your company? And how do you show them the value that they are to you and vice versa, what you are to them? And ultimately, the walking the block of a compensation plan is a key differentiator for smart organizations.
The problem is, though, right, is everybody wants to do the super sexy stuff, right? We just want to grab a few more people, right? We need to bring some people in. But if you're listening to this at home, we're giving you the secret sauce. We're giving you the way to fix what's inside of the four walls of your restaurant. So now when you go out to attract or bring a new candidate in, you're not selling them a false bill of goods. You're not, going back on the promise. Your promise is you're telling them they want to come work here because you're so wonderful. But then you're not doing it in the four walls of your restaurant. The secret sauce is CARE. Connection, affirmation, responsibility, and we're going to get into the next step on the next episode. So, next episode, we're going to talk about E, which is environment. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. So thank you so much for listening today. If you'd like to learn more about the SMART Systems continuous improvement framework and how it attracts, develops, and retains great people, reach out. And I'm going to give you our info in a second. So remember that the leaders with the best employees will win every time. So if you haven't clicked subscribe or follow, please do so below so we can keep you up to date on how to hire fast. You can visit me at getsmartsystem.com. You can email me at alan@getsmartsystem.com. And you can call me at 1-888-3SMART-5. Ciao for now.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.